Roundabouts and Firewood, a mental health approach for Irish guys. Chapter 17, A Perfect Strike. By the time Cian was 7 and in first class, he was 3 years into living with and reasonably understanding his dad's anxiety problems. His OCD antennae had become more refined, and unless I was quick to start moving and chasing him or getting him to chase me, he would recognize that fearful look in my eyes, which always elicited the standard command, "Stop being crazy." Most importantly, Cian had trained himself to laugh when I blew up at myself, and by doing so, earned spending money. While I continued to work on improving things, there was always that one big problem: life. Ireland was still a struggle. There were the finances, the erratic employment, homesickness, loneliness, and that feeling each day was just another struggle to get by in this foreign land filled with foreign people. Yes, life was not easy, but one afternoon and one morning, I tried to get Cian a donut. It was through this experience that I discovered Cian was fine with the OCD and knew how to deal with it. The task was simple. Go to Spar, pick up some hand soap and a donut, return home, and give Cian the treat. At the shop, the person in front of me had set her liter of milk on the counter and asked for a pack of cigarettes. After paying and getting her change, I walked up and set my items down. When the cashier picked up the soap to scan it, I noticed a clear liquid on the counter. The bag with the donut was dragged across the liquid, and then I was informed how much I owed. After paying, I grabbed the soap and bag. It was water, nothing to worry about. It was from the condensation around the carton. "You know this," I said to myself as I walked out the door. Everything was in my favor to give Cian that donut. Yes, I was entertaining the thought that perhaps that liquid was not water, but heavy bleach, and somehow the bleach had seeped through the plastic bag, and my son would eat the donut and his intestines would be torn to shreds. That said, I was rested, had exercised, had eaten a snack, and the last couple of weeks had gone well with my CBT homework. Best of all, I had walked down to the Spar, so I was moving while the obsessive thoughts were at their worst. When I walked into the house, confident I had everything under control, I saw that Cian was where I had left him in the kitchen doing his homework. The sight of the back of his head triggered a rush of anxiety that I had thought I had reduced to a minor annoyance. Still, all I had to do was give him the sugar-covered pastry, watch him eat it, and when I started freaking out, which I was certain I would do, go out and sprint up and down the block until I was so physically exhausted I wouldn't care. Victory was close at hand. I chose another physical release. I slammed the bag onto the floor. But this gave me no satisfaction because even though I had thrown it down as hard as I could, the donut kept its shape. Something more needed to be done. I took a few steps back, and with all the force my 43-year-old leg could muster up, I kicked it as hard as I could. It sailed through the hallway, through the doorway, across the kitchen, into the open dishwasher, landing where one normally puts the plates. Cian got up and peered inside the dishwasher to confirm the accuracy of my kicking leg. "Nice shot, Dad," he said, laughing. Feeling a bit calmer and yet apologetic for my behavior, I said, "Cian, I can't give you that donut." Still laughing, Cian said, "That's okay, Dad, I don't need a donut." "No, I'm getting you a donut, you just can't have that donut." I reached in my pocket and pulled out a $5. Then I said, "This covers the laughter today and most of the next one when you laugh at me again." The rest of the evening went well. First with a game of soccer, then an art project involving melting crayons with a hot iron onto a piece of paper. For dinner we went out to McDonald's, and on the way home I stopped by another Spar, put 4 donuts in a bag, 2 of which Cian ate while we played a game of Monopoly on the floor while listening to music. After reading my son a story in bed, I turned off his lights. What could have been a bad evening had instead been a positive one. Cian had gotten free entertainment, €5, and 4 donuts instead of 1. Now, all I had to do was to get Cian to school the next morning, and all would be fine. Chapter 18, 3 Bowls and 2.5 Spoons. Every 6 weeks or so, I'd buy a 16-piece cutlery set from Dunn's for €10, and it didn't take long for it to be winnowed down just to the spoons. A knife would fall on part of the kitchen floor I had deemed dangerous, or a fork would have been left too near an item that caused alarm, and the result would be to throw that piece of the set in the bin rather than wash it. Spoons would survive much longer. They are the one piece of cutlery that is essential. Forks and knives are just luxury items. Anything a fork is needed for, your hands can do, and knives are for people unwilling to use their teeth. But spoons, well, it's difficult to eat oatmeal without a spoon, and while you can drink soup, I do prefer to ladle it into my mouth. Also, any microwave dinner can be eaten with a spoon. You might prefer a fork, but at my house that fork had been thrown out long ago. As spoons are the essential cutlery, bowls are the essential crockery. Anything you can put on a plate or in a mug can be placed in a bowl. So why bother with plates or mugs? I didn't, and neither did Kian when he was at my house. When Kian came to the breakfast table that morning, I discovered I'd forgotten to run the dishwasher. In fact, in the back of it was the bag with the donut in it. At that moment, I owned 3 bowls and 2.5 spoons. The half a spoon was actually a whole spoon, but there was a 50-50 chance that I was going to throw it out. I had put it on the counter next to the sink, an area that I had deemed hazardous a week earlier because I had used a surface cleaner instead of soap and water to disinfect the area. Every day it was my intention to use that spoon, but I'd only get so far as washing and rinsing until the pressure got to me and I placed it back on the counter. I looked at the 3 bowls in the dishwasher and saw that 2 of them were encrusted with dry oatmeal. They would have normally been filled with water and placed on the counter, but because the counter was posing a danger and already driving me to throw out one of my 3 spoons, I chose to put the oatmeal bowls in the dishwasher until I washed the counter again. The 3rd bowl had a layer of vegetable soup covering most of it. It was the only candidate that I could give my son to eat as breakfast. The problem with hand washing a dish isn't the cleaning, it's the rinsing. You might recall I had trouble rinsing Kian's bottle when he was a baby. 7 years later, I had trouble rinsing his bowl, spoon, or mug, which is why I used the dishwasher, even though it would normally be just 2% full. With Kian waiting at the table, I washed and rinsed the bowl 3 times. Then came the extra rinses. By the time I got to double digits, Kian yelled, "Stop acting crazy and give me the bowl." I turned around and said, "Okay, you're right, it's rinsed," and then turned back and did it once more to be safe. I felt reasonably okay handing it over to him. He poured the cornflakes and milk into the bowl. Now I just needed to get him a spoon. There was the spoon on the counter. It had been cleaned and rinsed about 100 times. But if anyone was going to die from a poisonous spoon, it was going to be me. I was older, and Kian had so much more living to do. That left the 2 in the dishwasher. Both of these were covered with dry oatmeal. When I lifted them up to examine them more closely, I saw that one was in better shape than the other. Maybe, I thought, he won't notice anything is on the spoon when he uses it. I put the cleaner of the 2 spoons under the faucet and tried to scrape off the oatmeal residue with my fingers. Nothing came off. I turned around and quickly walked over and dropped my favorite piece of cutlery in his bowl, making sure he didn't get a good look at it. 1 bite of cornflakes was all it took for him to protest. "Dad, this spoon is dirty. It has stuff on it." "Yeah, your milk and cereal. Just eat. We have to get going." "Give me a clean spoon." I grabbed the spoon from his bowl and peered at it. "Oh, that's just a little oatmeal. It's fine." "No, it's not. Give me a clean one. Give me that one," he said as he pointed at the spoon on the counter. I took the spoon out of his bowl and brought it close to my eyes. "There's nothing wrong with this," I said. Then I stuck it in my mouth, over-exaggerating that I was licking everything off of it. I held it up in the air and said, "You know there's nothing wrong with it if I use it. I have mental problems, and it doesn't bother me a bit." Somehow, I was convinced that if I demonstrated a crazy man could use a dirty spoon, then a sane 7-year-old should be able to get over any issues he had with it. Kian was not swayed by this argument. "Give me that spoon over there." "I can't." "Why?" "You know why." "OCD?" Of course, OCD. There's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly safe. Then give it to me. I had just told him it was safe. I knew it was safe. Furthermore, I was aware that this was the perfect opportunity to demonstrate that while OCD won yesterday with the donut, today I would win with the spoon. Yes, I'll do it, I thought. I turned around, walked over, and lifted the clean spoon off of the counter. I held it up in the air and considered how silly I had been. I took 2 steps towards Kian and then abruptly turned to my left, pressed the foot pedal of the bin, and dropped it into the trash. With fear and anger combining forces, I glanced over and saw the 2 remaining donuts. They were in a plastic bag next to the sandwich and apple Kian was supposed to bring to school for lunch. I grabbed the bag and flung it against the far wall. The impact flattened them out a bit, and some of the pink icing broke off before they dropped to the floor. All other emotions gave way to just one: embarrassment. I had gotten to the point where I had accepted an episode was going to flare up every 4 to 6 weeks. That would be frequent enough for Kian to cope with it, but not so much that he'd get worried the problem was getting out of control. It hadn't been 6 weeks, a month, or even a day later. It had been 16 hours. Facing the wall, I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to turn around and face my son. So I stood there until I heard laughter. Dad! I turned to look at Kian. Yeah? You must really hate donuts.